It was an ordinary hospital room, filled with the soft hum of machines and the occasional click of a door opening. But for Max, today was anything but ordinary. His heart pounded in his chest, his palms sweating as he sat by the bed of his mother, Sarah, who had been battling an illness for months now. Despite the medical staff's best efforts, Sarah's condition had worsened. The doctors had told Max to prepare for the worst, but he wasn't ready. He couldn't be. Not yet. Max held his mother's hand gently, his gaze fixed on her pale face. She was still breathing, but barely. Every breath was labored, and her frail body seemed to be fighting against the inevitable. Max's eyes stung with the unshed tears, but he forced himself to stay strong. He had to be there for her. The room was quiet except for Sarah's breathing and the occasional beep of the machines. The doctor had just left, and Max was alone with his mother. Sarah had always been strong, never letting him see how much pain she was truly in. But today was different. There was a heaviness in the air, a sense of finality that Max couldn't shake off. "Mom," Max whispered, squeezing her hand. "I love you. Please don't leave me." Sarah's eyes fluttered open, her gaze soft and tired. She looked at him, a faint smile appearing on her lips, but it quickly faded as she struggled to find her breath. Max leaned closer, willing himself not to break down in front of her. "Max." Her voice was weak, barely a whisper, but it carried a weight that made Max's heart ache. "There's something I need to tell you. Something your father never told you." Max's brow furrowed as he leaned in, his ears straining to catch her words. The mention of his father, the man who had been absent for most of his life, made Max's pulse race. What could his mother possibly mean by this? "What is it, Mom?" Max asked, his voice trembling. "What did Dad never tell me?" Sarah's breathing became even more labored, and for a moment, Max feared that she might not make it long enough to finish what she was saying. Her grip on his hand tightened slightly, and she managed to whisper the words he would never forget. "Your father. He's not who you think he is." She paused, her body trembling with each breath. "The truth. It's buried deep. You need to find it. Your life. It's about to change." Max's heart skipped a beat. What was she saying? What truth? And why was his father, the man he'd never truly known, at the center of it all? Before Max could ask another question, his mother's breathing became more erratic, and her grip loosened in his hand. He felt his chest tighten as her eyelids fluttered, and with a final exhale, Sarah's head tilted to the side. She was gone. Max's breath caught in his throat, his mind spinning with confusion. Her words echoed in his head. "Your father? He's not who you think he is." What did it all mean? Why had she waited until the end to say something like this? His mother had just whispered something about his father, a secret that had been hidden from him for years. Max couldn't fathom it. Was it true? Was his father somehow involved in something he didn't understand? Suddenly the room felt suffocating. The reality of what had just happened hit him like a ton of bricks. And yet he couldn't ignore the chilling feeling that there was something more to this, something he had to uncover. Max stood still, his mind a whirl of emotions. His mother's words echoed in his mind, their meaning unclear, but their weight undeniable. His father, not who he thought he was. Max had always believed his father to be a distant figure, someone who had left him and his mother when he was young, without explanation or remorse. But the idea that there was more to the story than that, something his mother had carried to her grave, shocked him to the core. He couldn't let it go. It was as if a door had just been opened, and behind it lay a truth he wasn't prepared to face. He wanted to scream, to ask someone for answers, but the room felt like it was closing in around him. His mother, the one person who had loved him unconditionally, was gone, leaving him with nothing but questions. The quiet hum of the machines around him felt foreign now. His mother's absence was an aching void that grew with every second. As he sat there, unsure of what to do next, a sense of urgency grew inside him. He needed to understand. What did she mean? Why had she told him this now, at the end of her life? Max wiped the tears from his eyes and stood up, his legs shaky but determined. The thought of returning home, to the empty house where his father's absence had left a permanent mark, felt unbearable. But there was no choice. The truth was out there, somewhere, and it was waiting for him to find it. Max made his way out of the hospital room, his steps heavy but resolute. He knew he had to start with his father. He had to face him, to ask him what his mother had meant and why she had kept this secret hidden for so long. His father had to have known something, something that had been buried deep, and Max couldn't let it go any longer. As he left the hospital, the evening air hit him like a cold slap. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the quiet streets. Max pulled his jacket tighter around him, the chill in the air matching the cold knot of fear that had taken root in his stomach. He needed answers, and the only way to get them was to confront the man who had been a stranger in his life for so many years, his father. Max arrived at his father's house as the last of the evening sunlight disappeared behind the horizon, leaving only the dim glow of streetlights casting eerie shadows on the sidewalk. He hadn't been here in years. The house seemed much older than he remembered, the paint peeling and the front yard overgrown. It felt abandoned, despite his father still living inside. His heart pounded as he stepped up to the door. What would his father say? What could he possibly say to explain the secrets his mother had hidden from him? The questions rattled in his head, louder than the sound of his own footsteps. Max raised his hand to knock, but before his knuckles made contact, the door creaked open. There stood his father, John, a man who had always seemed so distant, so cold. He had the same sharp eyes Max remembered, but something was different. A heavy air hung between them, and Max could feel it instantly. "Max?" John's voice was low and cautious, like he didn't know whether he should be relieved to see his son or worried about what was coming. Max didn't wait for a formal greeting. He pushed past his father and walked into the dimly lit hallway, his footsteps echoing in the silence of the house. "I need answers." Max said it without thinking, his voice cracking from the mix of frustration and sorrow. "You need to tell me what Mom meant. What did she mean by saying you were not who I thought you were?" John's face fell, and he stepped back, closing the door behind him. "Max, I—" He hesitated, glancing down at the floor as if weighing his words carefully. "I didn't think you were ready for this." Max was already shaking his head, his chest tight with anger. "I'm not ready. I'll never be ready. But I need to know. I need to know the truth." John looked at his son for a long moment, the walls of the house feeling colder now, as if they too were part of the secret that had been hidden. He ran his fingers through his hair and let out a long sigh. "I never wanted to drag you into this, Max." His father's voice was low, almost ashamed. "But your mother was involved in something dangerous." Max took a step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do you mean? What could she have been involved in? What happened to her?" John's eyes flickered with regret, and he motioned toward the living room. "Come sit down. I'll explain, but you have to understand that once you know, there's no going back." Max nodded without hesitation, his mind racing with 1,000 questions. He couldn't stop himself now. He had to know. He had to understand the truth, no matter how painful it would be. They sat down on the old couch, the silence between them only deepening as Max waited for his father to speak. John took a deep breath and began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your mother, she was involved with people who had a lot of power. People I was never comfortable with." He paused as if gathering his thoughts. "I tried to protect you from all of it, tried to keep you safe, but she got deeper into things I couldn't pull her out of. She wasn't just your mother, Max. She was hiding a side of herself that you and I never saw." Max's stomach twisted. What was he saying? What kind of secret life had his mother been leading? She had always been so kind, so loving. How could she have been involved with dangerous people? Who were these people? Max asked, his voice trembling. What was she doing? What happened to her? John's face turned even paler. "I never wanted you to find out. But now that your mother is gone, there's no way to protect you from this." He looked at Max, his eyes filled with a deep sorrow. "Max, your mother was involved in something I couldn't control. People who would do anything to keep their secrets buried. And that's why I kept you away from the truth." Max's heart raced. It couldn't be true. But everything his father was saying made sense. The strange way his mother had died, The sudden burial, the secrecy surrounding it all. This wasn't just a random tragedy. This was connected to something much bigger. He stared at his father, his mind reeling with the weight of the revelations. "What are you saying, Dad? What did she get involved in?" John leaned forward, his hands shaking as he placed them on his lap. "Max, your mother was part of a group that—" He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes darting toward the door, as though afraid someone might overhear. "I shouldn't have said anything. You're not ready for this." Max felt the weight of the moment crashing down on him. He had come here for answers, but now his father was pulling away. What had he uncovered? Max sat in silence, the weight of his father's words hanging heavily in the air. The more his father spoke, the more it felt like the world around him was unraveling. He had come here for answers, but now the answers felt even more distant. His father's words were a puzzle, pieces that didn't quite fit, leaving Max feeling like he was walking in the dark with no way to find the light. "What do you mean she was part of a group?" Max asked, his voice hoarse. "What kind of group? What did they want from her?" His mind raced with a million possibilities, none of them comforting. John ran his hand over his face, his eyes filled with regret. "Max, it's not something I can just explain in a few words." His voice was low, as if talking too loudly might bring unwanted attention. "These people, your mother got involved with them before we even met. They were into things that, well, things that were never meant to be uncovered." Max's frustration grew, his mind a whirlwind of questions that had no answers. His mother, the woman who had always been the center of his world, was wrapped up in something dark, something Max couldn't even begin to understand. "What were they into?" Max pressed again, his tone firm now. He wasn't going to let this go. "What did she do?" John closed his eyes for a long moment, as if the truth was too painful to face. When he opened them again, they were filled with sorrow. "I tried to keep you away from all of this, Max. I never wanted you involved. But your mother, she was the one who started digging. She didn't think the consequences through." He paused, a shadow crossing his face. "She was involved with some very powerful people. People who dealt with things—" His voice faltered, and Max leaned in closer. "Things that shouldn't be touched." Max's blood ran cold. The pieces were coming together, but not in a way he could have ever prepared for. He had always known his family's history was tangled, but now it felt like his mother's past had been seeping into his own life. The mention of powerful people, the secrecy, the hidden truth. It all pointed to something more sinister. "What happened to her, Dad?" Max asked, his voice breaking. He couldn't keep it together any longer. "What did she get involved in? What happened to her that made her die like that?" John looked at him, his eyes filled with a deep, haunting sadness. "Your mother, she found something. Something she shouldn't have." He exhaled slowly, almost as if bracing himself for the words. "These people, they were after something, Max. And when she got too close, they decided she was a threat." Max felt a chill run through him as he tried to process his father's words. His mother, the woman who had always protected him, who had always seemed so kind and loving, was caught in a world far beyond what he had ever imagined. "She was killed, wasn't she?" Max whispered. It wasn't a question. He knew the answer, and it tore through him. He couldn't believe it, but deep down, he understood. "They killed her to keep her quiet." John nodded slowly, his face pale as he looked away. "They did. And they would have done the same to you if you kept asking the wrong questions." Max felt the weight of his father's admission hit him like a punch to the gut. His mother had been murdered, and for years it had been hidden from him. The truth had been buried with her, locked away in a coffin he hadn't dared to open until now. "You knew, didn't you?" Max whispered, his voice filled with betrayal. "You knew all along. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you protect her?" John shook his head, his eyes filled with regret and pain. "I tried, Max. I tried to protect you from all of it. I thought if I kept you away from all of this, you'd be safe. But I was wrong. I should have told you the truth years ago." Max stood up abruptly, anger flooding his veins. His whole life had been a lie, and now his father was telling him that he had known the truth all along. The betrayal stung more than he could put into words. "You should have told me," Max shouted, his voice breaking. "I deserve to know the truth. I deserve to know what happened to my mother." John's eyes filled with tears, but Max wasn't interested in his apology. Not now. Not after everything that had been hidden from him. "Max, please," John began. But Max wasn't listening anymore. He turned on his heel, storming out of the room. He couldn't stay in that house any longer. He needed to leave. The truth had shattered everything he thought he knew about his family. And now there was no going back. As he walked out the front door, Max felt like he was walking into a new world. A world where nothing was as it seemed, where the secrets of the past were alive and dangerous. His mother's death wasn't just a tragedy. It was the beginning of a far darker story. And Max was determined to uncover every part of it. Max walked out of his father's house, the weight of the revelations crashing down on him like 1,000 tons of concrete. His chest felt tight, his head spinning. Everything had changed. His entire life had been built on lies, and now the truth was slipping through his fingers like sand. As he stepped out into the cold night air, the chilling reality of the situation set in. His mother, the woman he had adored, the one who had always been his anchor, had died because of something she had uncovered. A secret so dangerous that people were willing to kill to keep it hidden. His father had known, but he had kept it all from Max to protect him, to shield him from a world he was never meant to see. But the truth had been there all along, waiting for Max to discover it. Max didn't know where to go or what to do next. His legs moved on their own, carrying him through the darkened streets. The town, which had once felt like home, now seemed unfamiliar, like a place from a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. He thought back to his mother's words, "The truth is buried deep." What had she meant? What had she uncovered that had led to her death? The more Max thought about it, the more determined he became. He couldn't stop now. He couldn't let his mother's death be swept under the rug, let her secrets be forgotten. He had to keep digging. Max's thoughts were interrupted by a sound behind him. His heart skipped a beat as he turned around, expecting to see someone following him, but there was nothing. The street was empty, and yet the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. The feeling of being watched was inescapable. He quickened his pace, his mind racing. Who was watching him? And why? The detective's warning came rushing back to him. Some truths are buried for a reason. Had he become a target now? Was he stepping into something far bigger than he could handle? As Max reached the end of the street, he noticed something out of the corner of his eye. There in the shadows was a black car parked, its headlights off. Max didn't stop to think. He didn't even look to see if anyone was inside. His instincts screamed at him to move faster, to get away. He turned the corner, his mind swirling with fear and frustration. Suddenly, his phone vibrated in his pocket. Max pulled it out, his heart racing. It was a message from an unknown number. "You're getting too close. Stop digging." Max froze. The message was clear. They were watching him. Whoever they were, they didn't want him to uncover the truth. But now he knew. He had to continue. There was no turning back. He quickly typed a response. "I won't stop. I'm going to find out what happened to my mom, and I'll make sure everyone knows the truth." He hit send and walked faster, the adrenaline in his veins urging him forward. His steps became more deliberate as he made his way to the only place he could think of, the town records office. Maybe, just maybe, there were records, papers, files that could shed light on what had really happened to his mother and what had led to her tragic end. As Max reached the office, he pushed the door open and stepped inside, his pulse pounding. It was empty. The quiet hum of the air conditioning filled the room as he made his way to the back, where the town's old records were kept. His fingers brushed against the dusty files, and he began sifting through them. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, old case files. But then, he found it, a file labeled with his mother's name. Max opened it, his heart racing as he scanned the papers inside. There, buried beneath mundane documents, was a clipping from the local newspaper, a report about an incident his mother had been involved in years ago. The details were vague, but the words jumped out at him. Suspicious death linked to a series of illegal activities involving local officials. His breath caught in his throat. Max quickly skimmed the rest of the file. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. His mother had been caught up in something far more dangerous than he had ever known. The people she had been working with, the secrets she had uncovered, had been linked to some of the most powerful figures in town, and now they were trying to silence anyone who got too close. Max slammed the file shut, his mind spinning. He had to go public. But how? Who could he trust now? Was there anyone left who wasn't part of this web of lies? Suddenly, the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end again. The feeling of being watched crept over him like a shadow. Max quickly stuffed the file into his bag and bolted out of the office. He had to leave, but he didn't know where he was running to. All he knew was that the truth was out there, and he wasn't going to stop until he exposed it, no matter the cost.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.